It is season 5, episode 12 of Whole Lot of Wolves. I'm your host, Paul LePage, flying solo tonight, but ably assisted by Danny from Baltimore Wolves on the socials.
Good evening, and a very merry get out and vote.
And our guest tonight, making appearance number 2, it is Drew Breyer in Pittsburgh, representing Steel City Wolves. Drew, how are you?
I'm doing great, fellas. Thank you so much again for having me.
So, Saturday's game, Wolves 2, Crystal Palace 2. Let's break it all down. So, starting at the outset, as far as the lineups went, O'Neill's previous comments about belief in a back four were put to the side somewhat as the 3 centre-backs were retained, but it was Pablo Sarabia coming in to make that extra attacking player. It was team captain Mario Lemina who was benched in favour of a midfield duo of Tommy Doyle and Joe Gomez, with Nelson Semedo taking the armband. And when it came to that question again around the number 1, it may have been ducked for another week because of a illness to Sam Johnson, meaning that it was Jose Sarr in goal again. So, Drew, kick us off here. What were you thinking with that lineup and how they would approach this fixture?
Well, so I think, obviously I think Gary was feeling some momentum from last week and the impact that the second half substitutions made, in particular Sarabia. I think he was looking for him to be able to provide some service, hopefully get some crosses in the box. Initially I was intrigued and excited to see. I know that Sarabia in spurts can make a real impact on this team, but he's also he's also a bit of a luxury player too, and I don't know that I don't know that he was exactly what we were calling for in this game. I think but first response I was excited for it, but as the game wore on, it seemed it seemed that Pablo really wasn't quite up to Premier League speed once again, and so I think I'll be surprised to see him. I'll be surprised if he were to make a start this upcoming week against Southampton.
So it seemed in that first half it was Palace taking the initiative, maybe of the momentum of their first win the previous week at home against Spurs. Will Hughes missed a chance early on. That was very similar to Tommy Doyle's miss that we had at Brighton the previous week. We had a few brightish moments, really nothing to test Dean Henderson in the Palace goal a whole ton. But Danny, it was probably one of the misses of the season from Palace. Again, common theme here, because from a corner came to Trevor Chalobah, missed an absolute sitter from probably less than 6 yards out. What are we doing defensively each week when it comes to these situations?
God, I wish that I knew. It's to start earlier on. It just feels like partly we're not getting those covering runs from our midfielders to cover those late chances, like you mentioned, Will Hughes having. And then on the corners, I don't know. It's just it's one of those things where if it was happening only occasionally, you'd say well, Gary O'Neill can't really legislate for these individual errors, but it just seems like, and we'll get to it eventually with Guedes marking for the second goal. It feels like it's almost every week where you have these instances where it feels like you'd call it an individual error otherwise, but with it happening constantly, you have to start thinking about the coaching. I just don't know how we look so disjointed, and that was the key for me this whole weekend. Was just I was very disappointed to see how just disjointed we looked on both sides of the ball.
Okay, I'm springing this on you both, but how about this for a theory? In that we did so well last year in terms of set pieces, and now it's been such for a struggle. Do you think it could be twofold in that the way we set up all the last season was thanks to Lopetegui? And obviously, Lopetegui had instilled something in Kilman that was actually good when it came to the organisation with set pieces. And now that he isn't there, and now we're under O'Neill's stewardship, it's actually gone to shit when it comes to defending set pieces.
Yeah. It's I think people know that my feelings generally are somewhat supportive of Gary O'Neill, and that I want him to. I think that he will be a good manager at some point, and I would like for it to be at Wolves. I don't know if that's definitely going to happen or not, but something that I think I really sympathize with fans who are frustrated with him and even want him out at this point is that last season it seemed like we were always saying, well, he's not really playing with his team, and he's also like sort of half playing Lopetegui setup because he didn't have a preseason, but it all just seemed very pragmatic, and that's fine. Like I don't really have a problem with pragmatism, and it seemed like we were just getting results any way we could. And now we're sort of stuck in between where we don't really have a Gary O'Neill identity. Whatever that is remains to be seen. And meanwhile, we can't seem to be pragmatic at all whatsoever. So it's just, that's where I really understand the frustration, is that if we were just at least, being solid, trying to get clean sheets at home, I think there'd be a lot of forgiveness for some dull games if we were grinding out results.
Yeah, if I can jump in too, when you talk about identity, I think that is exactly it. This team, what is this team? Is this team a back five? Is this team, do we score goals? It is nice that we do score every now and again, but we don't keep clean sheets. We don't seem to have consistency. Even in, Gary hasn't found the starting lineup that he likes, or that he just is, we were kind of doing the whole square pegs round holes when he kept going to the same lineup that wasn't getting results. But yeah, what is the identity of this team?
So it was actually the Wolves next to put probably the move together of the match up to that point. Totally breaking out from the back, put in Cunha, who put a wonderful through ball into Sarabia. Threw on goal, only the keeper to beat, but hesitated somewhat and pushed the ball. Had the ball pushed away from him at his feet by Henderson. So, Drew, just back to your comments previously on Sarabia, could there have been an element of rustiness in there as well, maybe, finding himself in that situation, not overly familiar, given the lack of minutes this season?
Hesitated somewhat. He didn't even get a touch on the ball. Like Henderson was, he if it's, yeah, I get it. It's not his strong foot, but yeah, he didn't even get a touch on the ball. He was I don't know what he was waiting for. And then even the commentators said, he's looking over his shoulder, and what's he looking for? And yeah, I think I'm sure that's part of, Pablo's played, he's a veteran, he's in his 30s. He's played at the highest of levels. And rustiness or just lack of confidence, something. But Cunha set him up nicely a couple of times in this game to no avail.
So it was halftime then, 0-0 at the break, but rinse and repeat straight into the second half. Cunha to Sarabia, which probably was an easier chance, but do you put that down again, either to Sarabia, rustiness, or was that just a fantastic save by Henderson? What do you think, Danny?
I think with both of them, it's a mix of rustiness and also Sarabia not really being a natural striker. Even if in his previous clubs, he's much more of a creator, and he doesn't have that instinctive sort of shot on him where he's going to just in the moment, sort of like we saw later with Strand Larson, just decide to put it under the goalkeeper when he's coming out. And so in both cases, both the one before halftime and the one after, he's sort of looking for other options until it's too late and then panics. And in the first case, decides to try to draw a penalty unsuccessfully. In the second case, waits just a bit too long, and then the keeper's too close to him and hits him square in the jaw, which I mean, that one was better. At least it was technically a shot on target, I assume. So there was always a chance that it would deflect in or something, but he's not a natural striker. And when is the last time he started a game? It's just, he is, I think we were all expecting him to leave in the summer, and then now we're really expecting him to leave in January. So, where is his head at in terms of like his readiness to be in those moments? I suspect not great.
I think on that point as well, we talk about his caliber and the teams that he's played for. How many times has he been in a relegation battle?
Right.
It's not all too often that you get a certain psyche of person and player that are in tune with all of that, and it takes a special breed. So we'll see who stands out as far as that goes. But as night follows day, everyone, same old set piece. Sarr came, called, but Strand Larson inadvertently flicked it on, and this time Chalobah made no mistake with a striker's finish on the half volley. Drew, what do you put that down to? Individual errors, all of that, what's been said, rinse and repeat all the time?
I again, we were talking about when we hired the set piece coach, and we wondered if he only worked on offensive set pieces and nothing with the defense. And I gotta think that he seemed as though he was screaming. He certainly was not happy afterwards. I think Strand Larson probably thought he was doing the best that he could to even just try to clear it out. Sometimes you're already committed, but this is it's a real killer to just this happening over and over and over again, where where every set piece for the opposition is a real scoring chance for them these days.
So this prompted a triple substitution to the now familiar cries of "you don't know what you're doing," with fan favourite Tommy Doyle being one of the three to be hooked. And actually, this Tommy Doyle fanboy thought it was actually the right call, but there we go. It was Balagar for Totti, Lamina for Doyle, and Geddes for Sarabia. So, Danny, do you think O'Neill can only be reactionary? Why can't he take step forward, be positive? Couldn't he have made these changes or some of them at half time to try and take the initiative more?
Yeah, I would have liked that. Certainly there was enough evidence at that point that we were not playing in a particularly fluent way before halftime. So I don't think anybody would have doubted those choices. I think the chance coming out when the subs were made, I do think there's a part of it that's just the fans were frustrated, rightfully so. And that was sort of the natural break in play where it was going to happen. So it wasn't necessarily about the changes potentially, but just like that's the time to voice your feelings about it, because like I felt that the changes were perfectly fine. I think you could make arguments for Doyle staying on and someone else coming off or whatever, but ultimately they were perfectly good changes to make. And in fact, we did look lively afterwards. But I also take your point that, it feels like we're always just a step behind, especially in these games where we've been very disjointed. It was one thing with Brighton where I think like the game plan was sort of working. We were soaking up a lot of pressure. But in some of the other games where we've looked especially disjointed, like Brentford, it just feels like we're always a step or two behind in terms of the substitutions that are being made.
But it was only 5 minutes till the Wolves move of the game Santi Bueno pulling out that Doyle-esque hockey assist pass from the back. It was a wonderful piece of skill from Cunha, who put it on a plate for Strand Larsen to redeem himself. He certainly knows where the back of the net is, doesn't he, Drew, when given the opportunity?
Boy, was that nice to see. What a finish, what a redemption there just a few minutes later. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that is the first Cunha assist to Strand Larsen this year. And I think we've talked a lot about, Strand Larsen being able to unleash Cunha more as a number 10, more as a distributor. I feel like I thought he really was playing that role well this weekend. And I think I'm pretty sure that's the first straight assist from Cunha to Strand Larsen. And Santi, boy, he got it started in the Man City game when he set Semedo off to ultimately end with a Strand Larsen goal. Another really nice long ball to Cunha. And boy, Strand Larsen, they were talking about the difference between Strand Larsen and Sarabia, and Strand Larsen just a natural born finisher. I mean, takes the small touch, opens the wickets, and 5-hole. It was perfect. Well, it was very, very well executed, and Molyneux erupted.
And then just 5 minutes after that, it really seemed like we'd turned the corner. Again, Cunha, the architect, get us involved with a cutback assist for João Gomez to slot home. And this is pretty much perfect time, I think, for a no stupid question at this point, because earlier Todd DeWitt had asked on X whether there's any way to put a positive spin on this start of the season. And you could say it's the forward line, and particularly that Strand Larsen-Cunha partnership, as both of those goals were wonderfully crafted. Is that what we can have some enjoyment over, at least at this start of the season, guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think easily it's funny. The beginning of the season has been so depressing in so many ways, but there are tons of positives. It's just we can't enjoy them because our actual results have been shit. But, to me, the positives include the fact that we're not even talking about an issue with scoring goals. Josh had to pull some kind of voodoo to make us start scoring, but that hasn't really been an issue since then. And especially this season, we've scored in every single one of our games except for one. And that was against Arsenal in the opening week. And we've never looked back. And it's just, there's so much talent in this team. And I mean, I think that's another reason why some fans feel like it's time to move on from Gary O'Neill, because that Larsen goal is one that feels like it gets scored regardless of who the manager is. Cause that's just like a quality cross, a quality player in Cunha to be able to take it down and turn the defender, and then a quality finish. And it doesn't necessarily matter what the tactics are that lead up to that. And so, there's some really good talent in this team that can pull off amazing things in these moments. And we've shown that we can score at least one goal a game, but it's on the other end that we just can't seem to play a coherent form of defense, and also just play a coherent 90 minutes.
At that point in the game, I was thinking that we were on top. The Palace players looked a little deflated, heads gone down, poorer body language compared to our guys who were uplifted. Drew, do you think at 2-1 we should have gone for it even more and really gone for the jugular?
Absolutely. I mean, we're shipping goals at an alarming rate. So yes, it's these are not the Wolves that I started following 3 years ago. These guys can score, and they can't seem to keep anybody else from scoring. So we are going to have to outscore these teams. And, the 2-goal lead there, I think, they step on the accelerator and just, go for it. I think that really, 2-goal lead, Molyneux going nuts for that. I just, yeah, they needed to go after it. And, I think that they've got the personnel as well. But, I will say though, we haven't really covered this much, but Eight Nori he was just not himself this game. So I want to, I feel like a couple of different times he really slowed down the attack and, kind of took on 5 guys at once. And it just was sort of, I feel like there were a couple more opportunities where just one extra pass from from Eight Nori in particular could have, led to an additional legit scoring chance, where Wolves had the numbers and then just kind of lost it. So,
Yeah, I was thinking about that during the game. Just on the Eight Nori thing specifically, I was thinking about how, and this sort of relates to what Paul was saying about, players that sort of stand up when they're faced with a relegation battle and may have had that experience before. And it's just, some players, like I think Cunha is a great example, like seem to really shine when the pressure is on, and not even necessarily the pressure on themselves, but the pressure on the team. Like they know the sort of atmosphere and they feed on that and they become like even more clinical. I think as much as I love Ryan Eight Nori, and he's an amazing talent, I think when the pressure is on the team, he sometimes crumbles a bit, and it's those quick decisions. He just is taking forever to make a decision, and for him the default is always see if I can dribble through everyone, and that's not always the best choice. And sometimes it's worked well, but we saw how many times in that game where he just seemed to run into a brick wall. It's like couldn't choose, try to take it on your own, and then eventually just run out of space. So yeah, it will be interesting to see if we continue to struggle, which players are able to stand up under that adversity.
I think the Out Nuri example is quite poignant, because the whole example of switching to a back 5 should have been to give the likes of him some freedom, in that he could be more offensive. He didn't have that necessarily as much defensive responsibility. So if that's not clicking for him going forward, then that's an issue, because with this formation, there's not necessarily a natural like-for-like replacement for a left wing back either. So he's in a really tough spot when it comes to formations and the pieces that go into it, I think.
And that's why I bring up like how disjointed we look. I mean, even in the dark days of last season after the Coventry loss, when we were going through a huge injury crisis, missing most of our attacking players and having to play kids, it felt like I understood what we were trying to do. Like I think of that loss at Newcastle, I think it was 3-0. And it was just like, that was kind of a terrible game to watch. It was raining. All the players were sort of underperforming, because I think it was like, might have been midweek too, or maybe we had a midweek game and they were just all tired. And it was just like awful. But like, I understood what we were trying to do. We just didn't have the legs or the personnel to do it. But now, I mean, we have a mostly fit squad, and I mean, we're missing our best center back, you could argue, but apart from that, we have some very fluent players, and just I often don't know what we're trying to do.
So as the game continued, unfortunately, it was only a few minutes later that same fragility at the back, another set piece being our undoing. Simple flick on from a corner, saw Mark Gay get a tap in easily at the back post. So again, like Drew in this example, if they're not going to go all out and attack and try and build on a lead, how can they try and lock it down? Because again, same old errors, same old issues. what can be done in either type of situation?
Boy, I feel like that's probably something that Gary O'Neill is trying to figure out right now. I mean, watching it back, I think that was Guedes's man. And I mean, if you watch the game, you look at the reaction of Guedes, where he kind of like puts his head in his hands and it looked like there was just such a bad mistake. And where Wolves are right now, they cannot afford those. It seems as though that every team seems to capitalize on those like weekly, and again, they've got to be able to establish a lead or something. I don't know, something's got to give, and I can't figure out what has to start working here, because what else do you need on a set piece besides get between your guy and the goal? Like that is, my son is 9 years old, and that's what we tell him on corners and set pieces, get between your guy and the goal. And it just like a simple misstep of just that, you can't, and next thing you know, it turns from 3 points to 1, and they can't afford that even this early in the season.
I think both of those were highlighted how it looks that the Wolves are easy to play against, in that it was put the ball roughly around the 6-yard box, put a little pressure on the keeper or surround the keeper, knowing that whoever's in goal is going to be somewhat challenged by those types of crosses, and see what happens. It seems like we have got a big mark on the back of our neck to say this is how you get at the Wolves when it comes to these set pieces, and how they correct it. Could this be down to O'Neill's lack of experience, that he can't see how it's fixed? We're at a loss to explain it. It keeps on happening. So
yeah, to that point, I mean, it's just like in terms of Wolves being easy to play against, there was a lot of doom and gloom over Palace beating Spurs last weekend, and how that really increased the meaning of this game. And I had some disputes about that on the internet, but I typed out a response that I never pressed send on during the week, but it was just that if I were a Palace fan, I would have been so thrilled with that point. I mean, both teams played fairly terribly. Palace looked awful. They were missing Eze. They were missing Wharton. They've got a bunch of other injuries. Their bench had almost no one on it. And to go into that and concede 2 goals and still get a point out of it, I would be absolutely thrilled if I were them. And maybe even a little disappointed that I couldn't win it, which says something a bit about where we're at right now. It's just it's so frustrating, because I think we have played much better than that this season, mostly against big teams who, we probably didn't have much business in beating. We played much better in the game against Arsenal than we did in this game, and we lost that one 2-0. So
it could have been worse as well. Right at the end, last minute in stoppage time, I think it was, Mateta goal ruled out, previously foul on Sarr. It was not given as a goal on the field, and VAR confirmed that decision. Drew, any thoughts on that? A little conjecture online as to whether it was a goal, whether we actually got away with one. What were your thoughts?
I think, thank goodness, I don't think the Wolves could have afforded a loss there, and in extra time, no less. That just would have been crushing. I think if it were on the other side of things, and that was Strand Larson who would put it in after a questionable, I think we would be losing our minds that VAR had done us over yet again, in denying us a game winner deep into stoppage time. I think, honestly, the last 2 weeks, the Wolves should feel really, really lucky to have 2 points out of these last 2 weeks. Being down 2-0 after 85 minutes and facing a 3-on-1, and then for this, I mean, honestly, they were both going for the ball, and when you really slow it down and look at it, I mean, that is, as a Wolves fan, I'm glad it was called the way it was called, but it would not have really surprised me had it gone the other way.
Yeah, I think technically by the letter of the law, it was probably correctly not a goal, but at the same time, I think that you have to say we massively got away with it. I think that if that isn't disallowed on the field, I think that doesn't get overturned. If it's counted as a goal originally, I think it doesn't get overturned. And ironically, maybe VAR has saved Gary's job.
That was not on my Wolves bingo card, Danny. I'm not gonna.
So ultimately, again, given the opponent situation they found themselves in, guys, would you say ultimately that was enough?
I mean, define enough. It's never enough at this point because of, all the prior results and the prior performances. And I kind of keep going back to that. I know people are probably tired of hearing Gary say some version of, we've played well or whatever, but it is just like the manner of these results is what's killing us. It's like that Newcastle game where it was just like, honestly, like if you just went back and just showed me the scoreline, I wouldn't be that upset. But watching the game itself or the Villa game or any number of other games, you'd say like, well, the scoreline, I don't mind, but watching the game itself just does not make me feel confident about where we're going forward. So enough in the sense that I think he needed to not lose it. Yes. Enough in the sense that it, makes me feel optimistic for the future. not in the least.
Yeah, I think my optimism level is very deteriorated, and let alone my Masquera squeezy bumometer level. I don't even want to get into that, but I think that I a lot of people were saying it's not a must win, it's a must not lose. But as they don't have Eze, they don't have Wharton, they have a bench that looked like what Wolves were playing last year for the last 10 games. A lot of guys number like 64 and 57 and stuff, and we're at home, right? And this is supposedly the meat of our schedule when we've got to get 10 wins, I think, to stay up this year, right? So the first one's gotta come. It's gotta get here, and it hasn't yet. And that is, it's incredibly frustrating. And again, like what is the identity of this team when it does get here? And is that lineup, going to be the one going forward? And then, and once it is, then we've got 4 guys who are on the brink of a 1-game suspension too for yellow cards. So we won't, where's the consistency gonna come? I don't know if and is Gary the guy to get us there? I don't know, but is the guy to get us there out there, and will Fosun pick the guy? I don't know that either. It's tough to be a Wolves fan right now.
I think to answer my own question, it wasn't enough for me. Even winning this coming game on Saturday won't be either. I think that the damage is done. It was the thing of, oh, well, let's get to November, easier schedule, easier opposition. And that proved it to some extent that nothing's changed, and nothing's changed not going back to the start of the year, start the new season, but even to the playing out the end of the last one. And again, it comes to all of those elements about identity and team and all of this, and it's just it's non-existent. There's no real body of team there, in a weird way, in that there's nothing that you can say that's effectively what the Wolves do well and what the Wolves do well consistently. Like, we might put some good moves together and score some great goals, but it's not like we're a constant threat of doing that either. Yeah. It's not like we're looking the team that can soak up pressure and hit a side on the break and score. There's nothing that I can put my hat on to say this summarizes the Wolves. And for me, it comes down to the head coach, and nothing's changed, and I don't think it will be. For me, these two games at home, given the level of competition, that it was 6 points or bust for me. So I'm more than ready to move on, and I'm generally surprised that we haven't, and that makes me even a little more concerned. If the powers that be think that this is okay, then we really could be screwed.
Yeah, I think I said something, I want to say maybe after the Villa game. It was after one of the games where there was kind of a big collapse. And I said that, again, like, that I didn't particularly mind the result, but the manner of the result was bad. And I said at the time that the reason for that was that, like, it just puts all this pressure on these games that should be more winnable. Because now we think about what kind of a game would we have to have against Southampton to make us feel like more comfortable. We have to go into another international break after that. Like, to me, even if they had kind of a complete performance, I think, like, we won 3-0 around the holidays last year against Everton. I think, like, that game, I could imagine, like, kind of control the game for 90 whole minutes, completely dominate, score enough goals that were comfortable, clean sheet. And I still think that even if we had all that, I think there would still be questions during that international break. And that is a really bad place to be in, not only as a Wolves fan, obviously, but also that's a bad place to be in for Gary O'Neill. I just think, I can't imagine that his relationship, the trust that supporters have in him, is going to be repaired. There's always going to be a segment, even if he turns it around and lasts the season, let's say, and we stay up easily, I think there's always going to be a segment that is going to find any little slip to say, like, we knew this should have ended a long time ago. So, I mean, that's a good reason why maybe it's just time to move on now. I mean, that's sort of what people are saying, isn't it? That the biggest reason is that we're going to get to end of November, beginning of December, and if we fire him then we're going to say, well, why didn't we do it back then? There's nothing that we're going to learn between now and then that's going to change our mind about it.
So that brings us nicely to this coming Saturday's game. Again, at home, 9 a.m. Central kickoff, 10 Eastern. We're playing Southampton, who, like Palace, are just off the heels of their first victory of the season. So, Danny, what do you think Southampton are going to do when they come to Molineux this weekend?
Well, I had the pleasure or displeasure of watching that whole game. I may have mentioned before, I have a very good friend who is a Southampton fan, and we watched that game together. And I can report that both Southampton and Everton were extremely terrible. It was a good warm-up for watching the Wolves Palace game, to be honest. So Southampton generally start out with three center backs, with essentially a back five. I guess they've been starting Cameron Archer up top, and we know him from hitting a worldie against us when he was playing for Sheffield last year. But generally, I mean, a lot of the players that I think have given us trouble from Southampton in the past, in their past times of the Premier League are not there anymore. I mean, James Ward-Prowse was always good for a free kick goal against us, and And I think Che Adams always managed to bundle one in, sometimes off of his hand, only to get disallowed. But as Todd says in the chat, they're not going to be particularly afraid of us if they saw that Crystal Palace game. They're going to know that if they can keep it scoreless, then they always have a chance on a set piece. Now, that being said, I do think that Southampton look almost maybe even more disjointed than us. And I think that we should have a even better opportunity, if that's possible, to control a game against Southampton than we did against Palace, even the depleted Palace. But I would have said that before the Crystal Palace game too, is that we should be able to control this game completely from beginning to end. And then we did not do that. So we had more control in the game against Man City. So there you go. I don't know. It's easy to find reasons to be confident because I think Southampton aren't very good, but it's also extremely easy to find reasons to be pessimistic because we just watched Wolves be not very good.
Drew, what do you think the Wolves do when it comes to this game? Shape, lineup, any wholesale changes? Does Guedes get a start after an assist on Saturday? What do you think?
I think right now Gary's grasping at straws, and I could see him, kind of as he's like thinking Sarabia gets to start building on the momentum from the Brighton game. I could see him thinking, let's give Guedes a start building on some of the momentum from the Palace game. Although, again, he's not particularly defensively sound either. I realize, that's not his role primarily out there, but, we kind of need everybody to be in with that. I think, if we're going like for like, where, sort of the back three, back five, kind of 3-4-3 look, that if that's the same that Southampton is going with, could end up a lot like this Palace game where there was sort of a lot of, like for like in that first half, and it just became pretty boring. Wolves got to take their chances. I think Wolves get their first win, and honestly, I think it then convinces Fosun to keep Gary again through the international break. I think they squeak one out like 2-1 or something, and we all are really losing our minds. There'll be like 18 minutes or something of extra time added for an injury or something, and we just have to go corner after corner and just pray to God that one of these times we actually mark our men and keep the ball out of there. I sure hope they get their first win this weekend. It has been a rough go watching this, but it's tough because, Palace got that monkey off their back right before playing us and got their first win. And now Southampton did too. And there's so much talent on this team. They really need to break through and get a full 90-minute game out of everybody. That would be my real hope for this game, is to get, without the mistakes, the bad giveaways. We didn't even talk about the fact that Sarr could have put them up like 2 and 3-0 on different occasions in the second half. The Wolves were really lucky to escape with a point with Palace. So I just want them to play a game worthy of a win this weekend with Southampton coming in.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think, this is going to be one of the most interesting lineups for me to see, because I think that a lot of us felt that they probably gave Gary until this international break. So, up until through the Southampton game. And then I think some people feel that it's going to go a bit longer than that, they're sort of going to put their trust in Gary to pull it out until things get really panic stations before the January transfer window. And to me, I'm going to be looking at that lineup to see if I think that Gary thinks it's his last game, because if he thinks that it's win or die, then I think we're going to see, like, instead of this hybrid three center backs, but playing kind of a back four, we might see, a true back four. We might see, a winger come in that hasn't come in before. It might be like Forbes instead of Sarabia or something, like something that we haven't seen a whole lot of since the beginning of the season. That to me would show me that he probably thinks that he has to do something, and he might as well, do something in sort of his system or his way, which he's been alluding to sort of cryptically. But if we see more of the same, then to me, it feels like he probably thinks that there's trust there for at least the short-term future.
Danny, what would be your prediction for the result on Saturday?
I have a sinking feeling. And it probably has a lot to do with the fact that I'm probably going to watch this game with my friend who's a Southampton supporter. And this feels extremely like a 1-1 draw to me. And I think the most painful part is I don't know whether that's enough for the powers that be to fire Gary O'Neill. I want Gary O'Neill to turn around. I think that he has it in him, but I'm not hopeful anymore that that's actually going to happen. And I think that he will go sooner rather than later. And it worries me if he does just enough for them to keep him around, but things continue to get worse.
I'm very much in agreement. I think it will be a 2-2 draw, and again, not good enough. And again, a lot of what we talked about that we actually need at this point. But I'm just hoping that if it is the case, if we don't get 3 points, then at least it prompts a change, and then you just crossing fingers, toes, and everything else that can be crossed, that they get someone in who can fix it. So we shall see when it comes to Saturday.
No Stupid Questions is presented by Esfuerzo Wines. Located just north of Santa Barbara, California, Esfuerzo Wines showcases passion and 3 generations of winemaking in every bottle. So whether you're celebrating a Wolves victory or winding down after a day at work, let Esfuerzo Wines transport you to the heart of California's wine country with every sip. For a limited time, head to esfuerzowines.com and use the promo code WOLVES for a 15% discount on your wine purchases. This message is intended for those of legal drinking age. Do not drink and drive. Excessive alcohol consumption may be harmful to your health. If you or someone you know is struggling with alcohol abuse, please seek help. Esfuerzo Wines reminds you to enjoy their products responsibly and in moderation.
So it is favorite part of the show where you, the listener, can ask us anything related to Wolverhampton Wanderers Football Club, either by hitting us up on X at WLW Pod. X is what Twitter used to be back when it was good. Or you can email hello@wholelotofwolves and send us an email with your question. The first one is from Houston Wolves on X today, and they ask whether anybody has seen the first team physio at the Wolves, Oliver Leaper, and our friend Todd DeWitt in the same room together, and we will see why. Everyone, take a look at this. That is pretty uncanny. So there is obviously we've got a Minnesota Todd in the chat, but is that really Minnesota Todd DeWitt, or is it really Oliver Leaper? Who knows? This is one that we need to find out.
Yeah, Todd, let us know if Sasha's really close to coming back. Maybe that'll turn us around.
Todd replies in the comments that they're actually brothers. So interesting, very interesting. So first team physio, quite apt with the next question, because given our somewhat injury crisis in WLW Pod Towers this evening, time of recording, it is Joshua Buckley who asks from his deathbed, who on the team is the biggest baby when they're sick and have a fever, and also who is the biggest germaphobe? I'll give that one to you first, Drew.
Well, I suppose I should say Sam Johnston, right? I mean, is with his mysterious illnesses these past few weeks. Maybe Sam, and then biggest germaphobe. You know what? I bet. Let me think here. I bet you that is. I'm going to say Nelson Semedo.
Any insight on these two, Danny?
I think that the one I immediately thought of for germaphobe, this might be not people's first guess, but Ryan Aït-Nouri. There's just something about him where I feel like he's one of those people who's like, no, I don't shake hands. You know, it's just like it's fine. Like if it's a teammate hugging him on the side, but like, you know, if he's walking into a stadium and a security guard reaches out to like shake his hand or something, he's like, no, I don't shake hands. Just like someone who's not going to go around doing a lot of personal contact with strangers. In terms of a big baby, I'm always going to fall back on the emotional resilience. I can imagine Cunha, you know, being a bit of a baby about being slightly under the weather and needing to be taken care of. Yeah, Todd says in the chat, the answer to both is Cunha. I can believe that.
I think mine, as far as biggest baby goes, I'm going to throw him under the bus again, but it comes down to the climate and him wearing gloves. But I think it's Matt Doherty.
Yeah, I like that answer.
As soon as that winter chill comes in, there we go, and he's calling in as soon as he gets that opportunity. Biggest germaphobe for me, I think it's probably João Gomez. Just that he looks so clean and well presented that I just think he's going to be
immaculate.
His house will be spotless. He'll be like, there won't be anything out of place. I just think he's so precise with everything like that. He's the germaphobe out of everyone. So that is our No Stupid Questions for this week. And it is thanks to our friends at Espresso Wines in support. So do go head on over to espressowines.com. Use that promo code, which is Wolves, at checkout, and you will get 15% discount. And timing's great. Holidays are approaching. Perfect time to stock up and to support our show sponsors. So as we are wrapping up, Drew, tell the listeners how they can get a hold of you and everything about Steel City Wolves.
Yeah, sure. So I am on, I'm on X at Drew Freakin, no G at the end. I normally talk about Wolves, and also I try to dash the hopes of Steelers fans who think that they're actually going to win a playoff game this year. But other than that, I'm a relatively positive guy. But you can Steel City Wolves on Facebook. They also meet up for games at the Pitch on Butler, owned by a Wolves fan. So check it out.
Awesome. And that finishes the show for this week. Thanks to Danny on the socials, Alex producing, you, the listener, because this show exists for you and it's your support that keeps it going. So if you are new to the YouTube space, please head on over. You can like our channel, you can subscribe to it, support the show that way. That would be much appreciated. And on the podcast listening platform of your choice, those 5 stars, those reviews go such a long way to helping boost the profile of Whole Lot of Wolves. So do keep those coming in. As you do your civic duty tomorrow, don't write on the ballot paper, O'Neill in or O'Neill out. Do go and vote. Use it wisely, and maybe as you leave, you can tell some unsuspecting soul to up the mighty Wolves.